Hey everyone, and welcome to Tabletop Teaching Educators Edition. Today I'm going to talk a little bit more about personalized learning. It tends to be the thing that I talk about the most, but honestly, if you haven't gotten on the bandwagon yet, it's time. Before I get started talking about personalized learning, please hit the subscribe button down below and get all of our videos as they come out. It would be amazing. Thank you. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say is if you're not already on the personalized learning bandwagon, again, you definitely need to be. And I know it's not the easiest thing in the world to start off with, but it's definitely worth it. And once you start, you don't go back, I promise. Why is it so great? Well, first off, the student engagement that you get with personalized instruction is through the roof. Allowing students to use their own interests to help them in their classroom is the easiest way to get them to want to do the assignments that you have to offer. I will admit that in the English classroom, it is easier than in other classrooms to personalize. History and science also have a pretty easy way to personalize as well. Math might be a little bit more difficult, but it is still possible. So please, if you are a math teacher, do not run and hide just because you teach math. I promise you can make this work as well. There's math everywhere in the world, and there's math all over the internet. So I know that if you give your students the tools and the opportunities to check out some of these other options, they can definitely do that. However, because I'm an English teacher, I'm going to talk a little bit more about English. So the first thing I'm going to say is if the idea of personalizing your own classroom sounds completely nuts, start with a group assignment, okay? And the easiest thing to do for group assignments is to let them pick a topic, okay? So you have your students in groups of 4 or 5, and you let them talk it out and choose between 7 different options that you give them. As long as you give them an option box to choose from with 7 or 8 options, they're still going to have a blast. The student engagement is going to be what you want, even though they didn't necessarily choose something random out of the blue. Personalized instruction doesn't always mean giving them 100% choice. You're definitely giving them choice, but you can go ahead and modify the amount of choice that you give them to make it easier on yourself. Also, I've noticed that sometimes if you give them too much options or too much choice, they might get lost. Some students would prefer a smaller option list. So if those are the students you have, go ahead and work with them and give them what they need. So once your students in your groups have chosen a topic out of your selection, allow them to choose a multitude of things that go in that topic. For example, they have to choose a literary text, a fictional text, a informational piece, maybe a poem or a song. Then also branch out. Let them look for websites and videos and podcasts and all this other media that's out there, because that is going to be where you really sink your hook into them to love your class, right? You're going to let them explore the world that they understand, right? I would even let them look up things like articles and posts on social media, because as long as it's relative to the topic, it should still count, right? So anyway, you let them explore and find the material that they're going to use. Now this is brand new material that they've picked. So this material doesn't always have an answer key or Googleable answers. So it's one of the reasons why I like it the most, because it allows me to make sure that my students are really working hard for their own answers. Now, once they have their own content, me as the teacher, it becomes my job to give them the instruction that they need based on the skill set or standard. So I'm not really trying to teach them, all the important things out of A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings. As much as I love that story and I wish all my students would read it, I'm not going to force that down their throats. What I'm going to do is tell my students, okay, you've all got your materials. Now what I want you to do is to find me the theme of a podcast based on your narration styles and using 3 pieces of evidence. And I want it to be 1 page written in MLA format. Now, all of a sudden, I have given them a very difficult and rigorous task where they have to do all this research, and they have to practice their writing skills, and they have to put all this stuff together for me. But at the same time, they think that they are having a blast because they get to do what they want to do. They get to research what they want to research. They get to listen to a podcast. They get to do all these things that they don't necessarily get to do on a typical basis. But at the end of the week or day or however long you give them for an assignment, I've got something tangible that shows me whether or not my students understand a concept, how their writing skills have progressed, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the things that teachers tend to get nervous about when it comes to personalized instruction is the amount of time it takes to grade the work. So again, if you have your students working in groups, everything becomes a lot more collaborative and you have fewer assignments, or at least you have fewer different topics that you have to go through, okay? That will help narrow it down a little bit to help you manage the personalized workload. Another option that you have is make your due dates flexible. So on Mondays, you might meet with groups 1, 2, and 3. And then on Thursdays, you might meet with groups 5, 6, and 7. And on Fridays, you meet with alternating groups or something like that. Set yourself up a schedule so that you meet with 2 or 3 groups a day, every other day of the week. And those are the days where they present their work. Now, when that happens, you're gonna just grade it, and if they have it, they have the grade. If they don't have it, then, well, what you've been doing, it's been plenty of time. And you just kind of cycle through the work like that. So even though each group has a different due date, you're still able to grade, but at the same time, you're able to conference with your students directly so that you can give them immediate feedback while you're grading their work. And it's such a wonderful option. And if your other students have more digitized assignments, or if they're able to already continue the research process on the next assignment and things like that, you don't have to necessarily be delivering a class the entire time. You can set up your classroom so that you can have more personalized time with your students, and the work is something that they drive themselves because they're so engaged. This is the true ticket to personalized instruction. Now, when you're ready to make the jump from a personalized group to a personalized assignment, I would recommend starting with the research project. Now, I said project and not paper because research papers, while very important, are not the end-all be-all to a research project. You really need to be allowing your students to expose their own creativity and talents to their classroom by allowing them a multitude of media and options in presenting the work that they create. So for a research project, I would always allow them or require them to turn in a written portion, but that's not going to be the final piece of the project. I would allow them to create a video or a podcast or a song or something that is creative that would show all the merits of who they are as an individual, personalized person. So again, that is the easiest thing that I have been able to find for starting off with individualized assignments per student instead of it being a group personalized assignment. And the reason is, for a research project, the requirements are the same for everybody regardless of the topic or the medium in which you turn it in. Now, with that being the case, make sure you think about that when you assign personalized assignments for your students. Make sure that the guidelines are the same for everybody, even though the material and the criteria might change a little bit per student. I hope you really enjoyed this episode of personalized instruction and how to maybe get your feet wet a little bit. Before I let you go, I'm going to remind you to subscribe to this wonderful channel that we have here, and also to kind of give you a little bit of a pick-me-up. When things don't work in the classroom, don't give up. Failure is part of the experience for teachers. It's okay if it doesn't go right the first time, but I promise you, if you keep at it and figure out what works best for you in your classroom, personalized instruction is always worth it. So remember, if you fail, don't give up. Just figure out what needs to change a little, tweak it, and make it work for you. We'll see you next week.